project and the lab first. I'm running the storytelling lab, which is a group that's trying to develop basically the next generation of storytelling tools around both image and language models. And this thing that we're deploying today, Patchwork, is kind of the first of our significant, like sort of releasable products out of that line of work. This is a research preview version of Patchwork, so it's probably going to have some rough edges and be a little bit thorny. I'm going to start panning around a little bit just to make sure people can see that. Let me know if it's not actually passing video through for any reason. Um, but yeah, the basic structure here is that this is all a giant infinite canvas. You can see that I can pan around, that I can zoom in and zoom out. And I've kind of created from a bunch of little pieces of text and images this kind of welcome banner where you can see that I've collaged together a bunch of these little letters made of patchy fabric to kind of, build out a banner like this. The idea here is that you can kind of use these large whiteboard spaces, which are viewable by both you and other people. They're all kind of sort of linked together in this cool hypertexty graph to create little settings that have their own distinctive vibes, their own distinctive atmospheres, and basically to use this for world building in the sense of creating a fictional setting, maybe with you and some of your friends, maybe just on your own, that reflects a style or a theme that you're trying to express. And then maybe create some characters for that world, create some places those characters might go, come up with maybe events and things that might happen in the story world, all these kinds of things. There's basically two main sets of tools that you're going to be using to do this. One of these is these sort of entity imaginary sort of like functions, and this is in the toolbox on the left. So we can imagine things like a character or an event or a place or whatever. And there's also these tools for creating more utilitarian scraps. All of these objects that you can kind of pick up and move around are scraps, and these are just sort of freely rearrangeable on the canvas. Most things that exist in this world are scraps. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate creating a new world and then starting to build out that setting using the tools that are currently available. Let me go ahead and first create a portal. And this is basically a way to navigate from one world to the next. And you can see here that the portal starts out in kind of an unlinked state. It's got this link button in the middle. When I click this, it's going to take me into the linking modal. I've actually already created a couple of worlds in this test instance of Patchwork that I'm currently sharing. The big instance is going to have a ton of stuff in here because it's going to show you all the public worlds that other people have created, and you can kind of burrow between them. But what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and create a new world from scratch. And this is going to take us to this screen where we can kind of initialize the world with a basic premise, maybe a description of what's going to be happening in this story or in this setting, and then a bunch of styles that I can choose between to kind of stylize all the images that I create in this world by default. If I want some inspiration, I can just go over here and click this die icon, and I see like, oh, Tower of Eyeballs, Seashell Caravan tries to placate the Eel Mother, Ghost Town populated by holograms, and just sort of keep on scrolling through these, trying to find some interesting high-level setting premises to maybe give me some inspiration. What I'm going to do here is keep on scrolling through a few of these until I find one that I kind of like. Maybe let's do like Time Traveling Jazz Band. I don't think I played with that one very much. And then down here, I'm going to kind of scroll through all these little style codes, which are basically randomly sampled from the space of styles that we have seen used, I think, to some extent in the community. And maybe click on a few of these to select them. I kind of like this like sort of wireframey art thing we got going on here, like very outliney. Let me see if I can see some more that are compatible. I like kind of the painterly style here. I'm not sure how these are going to play together, so I'm going to try to keep on sampling a few extras. This is probably a little too abstract to get good characters out. I kind of like the way this one looks next to this one, though. Maybe I'll try all three of these, and then I'll just delete this one if it doesn't look like it's working out. And I've got this checkbox down here for using my personalization as well. If I've done enough image rankings to have a personalization code, then I'll be able to use this as an additional sort of stylization parameter on this world and basically create images that are by default stylized according to all of these sref codes plus my personalization as well. So let's go ahead and create the setting. It's going to take a little bit of a moment because it's doing some setup for us. Okay, and now it takes us through to this new whiteboard we've created that's full of all this additional stuff. You can see here that we've got this world entity, which is just a sort of handle that links all these scraps together. And this is the world that we've just created as a high-level object, basically. You can see that when I hover over it, it's got that name, Time Traveling Jazz Band. It's actually got a linked description scrap, which is this more open-ended text that I can type in. So I can say something like, the band has 5 key members, I don't know who they are yet, but just kind of like open-endedly riffing into this little text scrap. And I can even make more of these if I want to say things like, I think there needs to be a saxophone player. And to make sure that the system is linking all this stuff up correctly, I'm going to use this link action in the action bar above this scrap to connect it to the world itself. And you can see that little handle appears in the bottom left to kind of indicate that this stuff is all linked together. We've also got these style references that I imported by default during that world initialization process, and these will be applied by default to all images that I create in this setting. And we've even got a few visualizations that have been automatically generated of the setting as a high-level concept based on the style references that I've selected. So we can start to see, okay, well, here's some of these little scenes that might exist in this time-traveling jazz band universe, and they're all, again, applying these style reference codes and this personalization profile that is sort of mine. I'm also going to create a portal from my inventory down in the bottom right-hand corner here, back to the lobby world, which is where we just came from. And I sort of clicked on it in the bottom right and clicked on the sort of canvas over here to place it in a particular location. And now I can kind of travel back and forth. Here's the lobby, and then I'll find my portal to my jazz band world again and go back through it. And I can sort of navigate back and forth this way, which means that you can establish, again, these little links between scenes and almost create like a hypertexty network of different worlds. Now, in this jazz band universe, I'm going to start trying to imagine some characters and some things that might happen, maybe. We often need to start out with a protagonist or an antagonist, or like at least a couple of characters to give us some sense of motivations and what people might want to do. So let's go ahead and create a character. By default, these characters are kind of unpopulated or empty. And so you can see that they have an empty name slot where I can just type in whatever I want. And then this description slot, which is also kind of linked up. But what I'm going to do here is actually click on the entity handle itself and use this tell me more action to populate in an automatically generated name and basic personality description for this character. So we're going to find out a little bit about who this character is and what they might be trying to do in this world. I'm going to make sure that this request is going through on the back end. It looks like it is. I'm just kind of tabbing out to the console for a second. And it looks like I might have to refresh to get it to load in the text. No, it's just still working on it. And so I can go ahead and do another of these as well if we want. I can sort of make an event and say, like, tell me something that might happen in this setting. And hopefully one of these loads in. Yeah, okay. So as the time-traveling jazz band performs, strange temporal anomalies start occurring around them. This is kind of stalling for time, really, because I want this character concept to load in. But I'll just go ahead and delete this one, create another character, and see if we can get one that actually populates this time. Okay, so here we go. It's going to actually give us Marcus Dizzy Gillespie, who's like a well-known jazz musician. I'm going to go ahead and delete that stuff, and maybe let's call him Marcus. But we've got a virtuoso saxophone player with a fiery temper and intense passion for jazz who clashes with the more grounded bandmates over his uncompromising artistic vision. So we've got this main guy. Let's see if we can paint our guy. I've clicked on the text description here, and I've used the paint action in this action bar to put myself in image construction mode. So now what I can do is drag and drop on the canvas to basically create a little zone for this portrait to go into. And you can see here that this is created what we call an image construction site. On top, we've got these little sort of by default ingredients that are included in this image. This is the world-linked style references. So this one, this one, and this one. My personalization profile is also kind of included here because it's linked to that world entity. And we've got this character that we're visualizing included as an ingredient as well, which means that these images that come out will be by default linked to that character and sort of treated as portraits of that character by the system. I'm just going to go ahead and paint this. I've got sort of a text prompt that I can edit here if I want. This is initially copied over from the text scrap that I'm painting, but I could change this to something else if I wanted to be more detailed. I could say something like, for instance, I'm actually just going to leave this as is, but you can like sort of imagine editing this to say something else as well. So let's cut that out, hit paint. This is going to give us a set of 4 images that are loading in. It looks like this character is kind of stalled out, so I'm just going to delete them. And I'm going to start arranging these to see what kinds of images we might get for our character Marcus. At some point, what I'm expecting to see, yeah, okay, here we go. We've got these progress images loading in, and we're starting to see sort of like different vague stylized portraits of what our guy might look like. These are all quite abstract, and we've got a few different concepts for what this character might actually appear to be. I kind of like this one a little bit, and this one, though I'm not sure about these two because they're kind of generic. I'm gonna unlink these from the Marcus character to basically indicate that I might keep these images around in the world to inspire stuff that we do in the future of this story, but I'm not going to use them for this character right away, and I'll just sort of stash them over here in the corner. And then between these two, we can sort of pick one of these to be our character's portrait, and then maybe use the other one to inspire a different character. So I'm going to unlink this one and see if we can create a different character who's based on this portrait as well. Now, we've got our first protagonist type character. We kind of are implicitly creating a conflict between the different members of this band, sort of in this personality description that we've got for Marcus. I'm going to go ahead and create a new character entity, link it up to this portrait, and then imagine via Tell Me More some possible... Okay, so it's given us Cassandra, which is not a great name for the character that's been depicted. Let's try again. Delilah Saxford. Let's just go with Saxford. And we're going to go ahead and populate in a description for this character as well. Sort of imagine a personality. Saxford has the mysterious ability to hypnotize audiences through his saxophone solos. Despite his talent, he struggles with crippling self-doubt between performances. So I think this is kind of an interesting basic character premise. To organize some of these scraps that are all attached to the same character, I'm going to go ahead and gather them. This is kind of a technique that we can use. I'm double-clicking this entity over here to kind of move all the scraps around as one. And I can do the same for Marcus if we want to kind of like group them up and be able to move them as a single unit. Now, let's try and figure out some things that might happen in this story. If I go ahead and create an event that maybe happens between these characters and start to imagine possible things that might happen there. Okay, so an encounter with a mysterious time-traveling figure shakes up the band's understanding of their abilities. They discover a dark force is manipulating the timeline, putting the future of jazz music at risk. And I kind of like this as a sort of very basic concept for an antagonist, basically, or something that might happen that causes like a conflict. So I'm going to go ahead and do one more character. We can maybe say some notes here, like this is the mystery time traveler who threatens the future of jazz. Maybe they're secretly an orchestra player or something like that. And imagine a name for them. Xander Quintus. And imagine a few more details about Xander. A master ventriloquist who throws their voice to manipulate the timelines. Their talking saxophone puppet Woody Woodwind conceals a powerful time vortex. The second line is just almost completely nonsense, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out. I actually encourage people who are using this tool to modify the text very heavily and reject things that they don't like, because that's how you kind of keep the tool from just taking you on a ride in some random direction. But I kind of like the idea of this being a ventriloquist and somebody who's like kind of using their mysterious voice powers to manipulate people. I'm going to paint Xander. We're going to do maybe like a wide character portrait instead of a narrow one, and we'll see how that goes. And we can maybe start to imagine some of these characters doing things as well. So let's go ahead and say, by repainting, using this repaint action in the action bar, our Saxford character, we'll do Saxford is soloing in front of a packed audience. It's in a dark club and people are applauding. This might be a little bit complicated to all convey in a single image, but we can see what we get out and kind of modify based on that. You might notice that when I repaint this this portrait, we've actually kind of default linked up this entity, Marcus, and we kind of see that, oh, actually it's linking up Marcus and not Saxford. I'm going to go ahead and infer character, which kind of says, okay, based on the fact that Saxford appears in this prompt, it's going to refer to that specific character. And that means that this portrait of him is now going to be used as a character reference for the images that we paint here. And so when I hit paint, we're going to get a little set of these. In the meantime, let's kind of look at our Xander Quintus portraits. Some of these are kind of a ventriloquist dummy more than a person, although I kind of like this like creepy costume he might have. I'm going to actually detach this from him. This is a weird image that I'm not probably going to use, so I'll just go ahead and delete this one. Not sure what's going on in this one either, but I'm going to create a prop that is Xander's dummy, and maybe link it up to this portrait so that this is now a thing that exists in the story as well. And I'll imagine some possible descriptions of this. An ancient artifact imbued with time manipulating powers. It speaks in an eldritch tongue that alters the flow of causality. Yes. Okay. So I'll move Xander's dummy down here. We've got Saxford as sort of, again, soloing to an audience. A bunch of people are very excited about this. I kind of like some of these. This one's kind of incoherent. This is a close-up shot of him. This is more of like the audience's perspective or sort of behind the audience. And this one is a little bit incoherent, but I do kind of like the vibe, so I might retain it and use it for something else later on. I'll just stash it over in the corner. And maybe it turns out during the course of this performance that there's a mysterious figure watching the stage from the audience. We only see them from the back. And I'm going to delete the Saxford character reference here and add maybe Xander over here and try to see if we can get some shots of maybe Xander watching the Saxford performance and maybe getting ready to intervene in some way that causes a problem. I'm not sure if this is going to work out, but we'll go ahead and leave it to generate for a second. And in the meantime, over here, I'm just going to try to see if I can get like a little bit more on Marcus, maybe see his face from a different angle or something like that. I'm again going to repaint and say something along the lines of Marcus is gesturing frantically to the band. He really wants them to put a lot of energy into this next part or something like that. And we'll paint him, get a few possible images. Okay, so we actually do have a few plausible shots of our mysterious ventriloquist guy watching this performance from a distance. This one makes no sense, so we're just going to reject it. But this one is a little eerie, and this one in particular does look like he's actually watching some kind of musical performance from a distance, and this is apparently the back of his head. He has sort of a weird, like, reverse side of his mask or something like that going on. I'm going to delete this one too. I'm going to unlink this one and maybe, again, use it for something later. I just have this corner where I'm stashing the images that I think are kind of evocative, but I don't want to use just yet. And so we'll have Xander be kind of watching this performance from afar. And now, in the meantime, we can maybe see if we can get Marcus, who's kind of enthusiastically performing over here, to like try to get some energy into this. And he's sort of on stage yelling out, and so on and so forth. You can kind of imagine how this sort of storytelling sequence is going to proceed as we jump between different character perspectives and start involving these different things that we've thought might happen in this story into a more coherent overall flow. Now, one of the nice things about this being an infinite canvas is that you can kind of branch out in a lot of different directions and explore different aspects of the story at the same time. So maybe while we've got this Marcus Saxford Xander scene going on down in this corner, we might also start to think about, in the broader future of this story, what are some things that might sort of crop up later on that aren't involved just yet. So we can maybe start to imagine things like places the characters might go. I kind of want there to be, we've got like this dimly lit speakeasy with vintage decor. This is very generic, but we can sort of treat that as maybe the setting that they're already implicitly in. Give me one that's different, please. Okay, an underground subway station repurposed as a clandestine jazz club hidden from the authorities. I'm going to actually change this to say an underground subway station repurposed as a secret operating base for the... let's say for Xander's minions. And we'll try to imagine one more detail about this entity and to see if we can get any other like sort of interesting things. Okay, so beneath the bustling city streets, a disused subway platform has been transformed into a clandestine jazz club where Xander leads the band through interdimensional rifts. I don't think this is true. We're just going to go ahead and say velvet curtains conceal hidden entrances while the stage glows under cerulean lights that dance across exposed brick archways. I kind of like this as sort of like an evil jazz club they might go to later on, and also sort of doubling as the headquarters of that main ventriloquist villain. So let's go ahead and paint this one as well. This is going to kind of link up to this underground subway station entity, and we'll see how good these images look. One of the nice things about these places is you can kind of use them to do establishing shots of these little scenes that characters might be in. And then you can start to combine those images with the character references themselves to create images of the characters in certain scenes. So if we get this underground subway station, I think a few of these are better than others. This one's kind of bare bones. This one looks a little too ritzy, I think. But these two both do give me the impression of like this space definitely was an underground subway station. It has been repurposed, and there's some like jazz trappings, but nothing especially like sort of rich or well provisioned. Um, so let's go ahead and see if we can just get, maybe we're going to have Marcus stumble upon this underground lair. I'm going to delete some of these Marcus portraits that I don't really want. I kind of like that one. Don't care for this one. We've got, his hair is very different in this one, so I'm going to unlink this one and just sort of hang on to it maybe. But then we've got this one as well. So I think these two will both be linked up as character references for Marcus, and we can go ahead and try to paint him in the context of this scene. To do that, I'm actually just going to go directly over to the tools over here and create an image like this. And I'm going to say Marcus stumbles into the dimly lit subway station club. What's going on here? And then we can kind of add as an image one of these, and that starts to use it as an image reference, basically. And we're going to also add, by inferring character again, Marcus himself is going to be sort of linked up as an ingredient for this image, and we'll go ahead and paint to see if we can get a few different shots of Marcus doing stuff in this jazz club. And again, we're starting to develop a much richer idea now of like who the main characters are, what the possible conflicts between them are, who the main villain might be, and then some things that might happen as these characters navigate this strange world. So yeah, I kind of like some of these. This one, it's more he's sitting at a bar, so I'm going to reject this. This one, I do kind of like that he's like wandering into this strange space and is kind of perplexed or confused. This one, he looks a little bit more trepidatious, and I think his hair is more consistent in this one. I might delete this one, and then this becomes our sort of default image of Marcus stumbling upon this strange location. And that means that this can be used as a portrait for him, or it can be used as one of these visualizations of this little underground place. So I'll go ahead and grab all this stuff, move it up here. I'll move this one down here. This is kind of the other jazz club that they're performing in at the beginning. Maybe I'll even spatially organize things by putting this one next to that first scene of the performance that's going on. And over here, yeah, again, we've got Saxford, we've got Xander, we've got Marcus, and they're all kind of doing their thing, kind of establishing who these characters might be. Okay. I have been working on this for a little bit now. And I think what I'm going to try to do is save this so that we don't necessarily like lose it if the server happens to go down. There's no guarantee during the research preview version of this release that everything is going to be consistently saved 100% all the time. So we've given you this kind of escape hatch for in worlds that you can edit. You can use the save button in the toolbox to basically grab a little JSON file of it and stash it away, which you can then load into worlds that you own via this load button as well. And in order to make sure that other people don't damage the stuff that I've created, because by default, all these worlds are actually visible to and even editable to other people, we're going to go ahead and hit the share button and maybe change the default permission level of this world from edit to view, which should basically lock in that this is a place that other people are now able to wander through freely. They're able to take a look at all these different characters and stuff that I've created. They might start to follow little image sequences like this. I could create notes to guide them through it if I wanted, to kind of introduce like, okay, maybe Saxford is soloing. He's doing a great job. And then over here, we can put someone watches from the audience. What's up with that costume? Marcus doesn't even notice. He's too focused on pumping up the energy of the performance. ... And so by arranging these texts with these images, you can start to, again, create more of a narrative through line to these. And obviously, you can start to imagine where the story might go after this point. There's lots of different things that can happen in these scenes. And we can kind of use these characters to create a lot of different scenes that are maybe interleaved in unexpected ways, and start to find lots of connections between things that are going on in the setting. But yeah, you might notice that I have not talked about some of the features that we have here. There's other types of entities that you can create, like events. We did a little bit of that. We did places. I actually created a prop for Xander's dummy, but I haven't done any factions yet. These are kind of groups of characters that might exist in this world and be trying to influence things, maybe from behind the scenes, or be sort of like greater forces in the world that you're creating. You can kind of randomize which entity type you want if you're just kind of like looking for inspiration. You don't care what form it takes. Notes and images I've covered. These are ways to just create more text and to create more images when you don't have something that you're like sort of specifically trying to depict. We use these portals to link between worlds. The profile scraps are kind of a thing that normally gets created by default when you do world initialization. But again, by linking these up to this world style or to the world entity itself, they become default world styles and they're incorporated into all these images that we're generating. And if I want to, I can even sort of exclude some of those briefly. So if I decide that I want to do a non-personalized, maybe less sort of sketchy looking image to see what this world might look like otherwise, I'm just going to do like jazz club with a huge clock in the background or something like that. And we can sort of see an alternative way this world might look. And then if we decide that we like this way of rendering things better, we can even change the world styles to basically remove maybe my personalization or maybe this line work style or something like that that are kind of giving it part of this look. And yeah, you can see this creates a much lighter, much more sort of like vibrant looking world in a lot of ways. One that's kind of bright by default instead of dark. And maybe one that's not quite as suited to the mood of the story that we're telling now, because we've got these kinds of characters creeping around in dark tunnels and those kinds of things. So I'm going to delete these, but that's another thing you could do is to kind of explore styles and very much tweak the individual styles that go into each image to kind of control maybe different parts of the world feeling a different way or having a different default vibe. And yeah, I've talked about saving and loading and sharing, and that I think basically covers the majority of features that you can use. There's a whole bunch of other things you can try that are kind of hidden away in these action bars on specific scraps. And one that I didn't talk about much was creating style references from a particular image. So if you like get an image that you really like the vibe of and you want to use that as part of your world styles, you can just create a new sref and link it up to that world. And now this becomes part of our default styles, et cetera, et cetera. But broadly speaking, I think the best thing to do now is probably to try turning some people loose on it and to see how things go. Before we do that, do we maybe want to do a quick Q&A period or something? Oh, chat wanted me to slow down. I missed that completely. Sorry about that. Yeah, do we want to do a quick Q&A period maybe?
Yeah, I can post the hive mind and we can start asking questions.
Cool.
Just want me to read them off to you, or are you in the hive mind?
Can I get the link to the hive mind again? I've lost which of the many tabs I am currently looking at.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay. And I think I'm probably screen sharing this. I'll go ahead and drop this out to a separate tab maybe. And then log into it. Okay. So I've got should I start just taking random questions off the queue here basically, or are people ranking things? What's the thinking?
If you scroll down to the leaderboard, you can select
Yeah, okay.
up, and then you can click on the one that you're discussing to put it up at the top and remove it from the board.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, number one is, can we use character references we already have? The way to do this right now is very, very awkward, but you can, in theory, do it. We're going to be doing a bunch of improvements around specifically bringing in images from your Midjourney gallery quite soon. The way that you do it right now is you go to your gallery, you copy the image URL, and you paste it into a note scrap, which then turns into a weird tiny version of the image that you've pasted the URL for. This is kind of ridiculous. So we're going to be improving it quite a bit. But if I wanted to, for instance, copy the image address from Marcus here, create a new note scrap, and paste it in, I think what it'll do, yeah, it makes a tiny little Marcus, which is now usable in theory as a character portrait or in any other way that you want. And the same applies for any image from your gallery. So that would be how you'd bring in your external character references. You also, if you really want, can, in this text box here, use some of the parameters that you're familiar with from other parts of the Midjourney interface. So if I were, for instance, to paste in this image URL, but just put cref in front of it, I can do like, let's say, there he is. Paint a few images, and these will in theory reflect Marcus, this character that we just pasted in the image URL for, because it's kind of passing those generation parameters along. Yeah, here we go. So again, this is kind of awkward, but we do support it, and we're planning to add a way for you to import images much more easily in the near future. This is something that's just kind of taken a little while to get working. I'm going to delete these, pop back over to the HiveMind. How do I dismiss one of these that I finished talking about?
Just click on it, and it will be added to the currently discussing, and then click on the next one.
Oh, click on the next one. Okay, cool. Yes, can we import existing MJ content? I think I basically just addressed that one, so I'm gonna put it up here, and then we'll move it down to the next tier. Will there be a dark mode? Someone in the mods and guides community has created a dark mode style sheet of some sort. And I don't think it's been shared yet, but we're planning to add one in the future. Yeah. Right now, this is not supported in the current version of the tool. Will these images created on these canvases be editable within the canvas? This is another thing that's kind of a future integration that I think we're hoping to add. We have the arbitrary image editor, obviously, that we launched a few weeks ago. There's a bunch of extra tools for varying images and doing these kinds of things. And a lot of these are going to be added over time. So the hope is that you'll be able to sort of pick the images that you've got on this canvas, drill down into them, and modify them in the same way as you might one of the text scraps right now, but using the existing in-painting, out-painting tools and so on to kind of modify them locally. So yeah, I think we do want to support that. It's just a matter of trying to bring that editor component in to the user interface, which is quite elaborate. So that'll be probably, I'm guessing like, around the middle of next year thing that we get arbitrary image editing integrated with this tool. Let's see. Will this tool work in stealth so other users can't see our world building stuff, just like stealth mode for regular images? I actually don't know the first thing about how stealth mode works. My impression is that stealth mode is something that mostly applies to Discord, or does it also apply to the website, Ancient?
It also applies on web, yes.
Okay, so on web,
testing it works. The world will be visible, but they will still be stealth on web.
okay. And the world itself being visible within Patchwork, this is a thing where you can actually change the sharing setting to none, so that this becomes basically a totally private by default world. And then if you really want to, you can even create a world that's completely private except for you and your friends, and kind of add their Midjourney IDs in here to put them in as editors. So we have a few worlds that are like that in the production instance right now, where I've created a world, I've locked it so that no one else can mess with it, but then I've added some of the other storytelling lab members, and they're able to sort of modify stuff.
What I see coming through a lot is if the images will go to your normal gallery, and the answer to that is yes.
Yes, they are definitely going through to your normal gallery, and that includes basically everything generated in the tool. So your gallery will get filled up with these things as you sort of create stuff in Patchwork. Will Patchwork essentially allow us to use multiple crefs with ease with the linked references? Yep, that's pretty much the idea. The characters as entities are able to support kind of an arbitrary number of these portraits being attached to them. So you can see here that Saxford, for instance, has this default portrait that we created, but then also a lot of the images in the sequence that we've created of sort of like more narrative stuff are linked to him, which means that they're all taken into account as character references when we generate more Saxford images. This means that in a sense, you're kind of refining the system's idea of what this character looks like over time. And by choosing which images do and don't get linked up to that character entity, Saxford, you can kind of refine the system's visualization of like what are the most representative portraits of Saxford, and what does he look like from maybe different angles or at different, sort of costumes or in different stages of his life, those kinds of things. And so I think this is a really sort of interesting affordance to blend together lots of different character references. At the end of a session, can you render the whole thing out as a storyline that plays out like a comic book or ideally a video with narration? This is stuff that's probably coming in the future, but we're not sure about the details quite yet. The first big thing that we're going to be working on in early 2025 is a sort of set of tools for linking together images in a sequence with text, where you kind of have right now an implicit sequence of like, okay, this thing happens first, then this thing happens second, then this thing happens third, then this thing happens fourth. And we've even created like text sort of scraps next to these images to give the reader in this infinite canvas interface a sense of the progression. But this is not like sort of known to the system that these are meant to be a single sequence quite yet. So we're going to sort of be building out a set of features around maybe getting automatic inline suggestions for where the story might go next, picking the ones that you like and rendering those out as images, maybe in-painting panels between pairs of panels that have already been created, maybe sort of going back into a sequence that's all linked up and editing them. And there'll be kind of a visual backbone that shows the reading order of these panels, both for the users and for the system, to kind of make sense of the image sequence. At that point, I think we can start to support a way to export a single visual page that has the images all kind of laid out in relation to one another like they are in the tool. And that becomes maybe sort of like a giant PNG or like a web page you can send people or something like that. Basically a little sort of comic that you can share. How many fast hours are getting burned with a session? I actually don't know. I think this is basically the same sort of costs of usage in terms of your hours as this like as doing generation in the standard Midjourney either Discord or website flow would be. So it's not going to be exorbitant compared to what you'd expect from Discord or the website. However, we do generate like a lot of little throwaway images in the course of making some of these worlds, and that means that if you're only retrieving or only like sort of keeping or hanging on to like a handful of the images that come out of the generator, then obviously there's more sort of like almost bycatch in the sense of like images that you don't necessarily want but that are getting produced anyway.
They do generate at a lower quality setting by default, though, so it should balance out.
This is true, yeah. We have for mostly speed reasons, but also cost reasons to some extent, made it so the default quality for all of these is Q.5. And I think you can set the default quality parameter yourself if you want by actually adding a note scrap with text parameters like Q1 that's linked to the world entity. And then that becomes a default parameter that gets slotted into all your new images by default. So if I go ahead and create this, you'll see that it automatically populates it into the text prompt component. And you can sort of use this to set up complicated sets of parameters in the default settings of the world as well. Which segues nicely into the next question I see. Is this Niji compatible? The answer is mostly yeah. And if I go ahead and add --Niji to this text scrap that gives me the default style parameters for the world, I can again create an image. You'll see that Niji gets populated in, and I can even render out like, let's say, jazz cat or something like that. I don't even know what that's going to give me, but I'm going to try it. I think what's going to happen here is that because my profile, my personalization here is a basic Midjourney V6 profile and not a Niji profile, it's going to reject this batch of images. Yeah, so it failed to generate because basically that's not a personalization profile that I can use for Niji. But I can regenerate from the same image construction site, remove that, and hit paint. And then that'll start to give me a set of images that are Nijified versions of those same style references with whatever text prompt I put in. So you can even create worlds if you want that are basically using Niji personalizations by, again, using this profile sort of feature over here, linking those to the world entity, linking up the --Niji parameter as a text scrap to the world entity, and creating a setting that is all using the anime model for your character rendering and your image rendering and so on. Can people without a subscription view these boards? We are still trying to figure out a lot of the access rules around this stuff. I would really like for people to be able to view this stuff publicly without it necessarily having to be you're a paying subscriber to the tools. But we need to work out personalization, or we need to work out permission stuff a little bit more before that can happen. So I think what we're probably going to do by default is only people who have a figure out the fine-grained permission stuff a little bit better. Is there access to a